Hey, welcome in. So, old Hollywood. Most people picture glamour, red carpets, perfect faces frozen in time. And yeah, that was part of it. But the deeper you look, the more you start to realize some of the most famous stories ever told about Hollywood aren't the real ones. Tonight, we're digging into a few that don't quite add up. Some were scandals, some were tragedies, and a few never really got explained at all. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was one of the biggest stars in silent film. A comedian, a box office machine, the kind of man studios trusted with everything. Then came a party at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. A young actress, Virginia Rapp, became violently ill after being alone with Arbuckle. Within days, she was dead. The headlines came fast and brutal. Arbuckle was accused of assault and manslaughter. The trials dragged on, 3 of them. The press had already decided his fate. In the end, he was acquitted, fully. The jury even issued an apology. Didn't matter. His career was finished. Hollywood had learned something important that week. Scandal didn't need proof. It just needed a story. Clara Bow was the original It Girl, electric on screen, magnetic off it. She represented everything modern, youth, freedom, and just enough rebellion to make people nervous. Then the rumors started. Stories of wild parties, affairs with powerful men. Claims, some outrageous, some likely fabricated, spread like wildfire. One particularly vicious story accused her of things so extreme they were almost cartoonish. None of it was ever proven. But that wasn't the point. The studios grew uneasy. The public shifted. And Clara Bow, one of the biggest stars in the world, slowly disappeared from the spotlight. Hollywood didn't just create stars. It could unmake them just as quickly. Thelma Todd had everything lined up. Beauty, talent, and a rising career in both comedy and drama. Then, one morning, she was found dead in her car, inside a garage. The official cause? Carbon monoxide poisoning. But almost immediately, the questions began. Why was she there? Why that garage? Why did the timeline feel off? There were whispers of mob connections, business disputes, a relationship gone wrong. Nothing was ever proven. But nearly a century later, people still ask the same question. Was it an accident or something far more deliberate? All right, let me ask you something. We've already seen a pattern here. A rising star, something goes wrong, and the official explanation just kind of lands. Case closed, move on. But if you step back for a second, how many times does that happen before you start to wonder, are these just isolated stories? Or is Hollywood really good at controlling the ending? Let's keep going. Errol Flynn lived exactly the way his on-screen characters suggested he might. Adventurous, reckless, untouchable, until he wasn't. In 1942, Flynn was charged with statutory assault involving 2 underage girls. The trial was a media frenzy. Fans lined up outside the courthouse. Headlines ran daily updates. Hollywood held its breath. Flynn denied everything, and in the end, he was acquitted. The phrase "in like Flynn" actually gained popularity from the case, suggesting he got away with something. Whether he did or not, depends on who you ask. Hollywood didn't just create stars, it could unmake them just as quickly. Lana Turner was one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Controlled, polished, and carefully presented. But behind the image? Her relationship with Johnny Stompanato was anything but. Stompanato had ties to organized crime. He was known for his temper, and by most accounts, the relationship had turned violent. One night, the arguments escalated. In the middle of it, Lana's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, stepped in. Moments later, Stompanato was dead, stabbed in the chest. Cheryl confessed immediately, said she was protecting her mother. The case moved quickly, almost too quickly, ruled a justifiable homicide. No trial, no prolonged investigation. Hollywood closed ranks. The story faded. But some have always wondered, was that really the whole story? Or just the version that needed to be told? Judy Garland didn't collapse in one dramatic moment. She was worn down, slowly, deliberately. As a teenager at MGM, she was given pills to stay awake, and pills to sleep. She was told what to eat, what to weigh, how to behave, who to be. The image of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz was pure and bright. The reality behind it was something else entirely. Long hours, constant pressure, chemical control. By the time she was an adult, the damage had already been done. Addiction followed her for the rest of her life. In 1969, Judy Garland was found dead at age 47. Official cause? Accidental overdose. But many look back and ask a quieter question. Where did that story really begin? Rock Hudson was the definition of the classic Hollywood leading man. Tall, handsome, effortlessly confident, and completely manufactured, because the truth about Rock Hudson couldn't be told. He was gay. In 1950s Hollywood, that wasn't just private, it was dangerous to a career. So the studios built a life around him. Public relationships, carefully staged appearances, a version of reality that audiences would accept. For years, it worked, until 1985. Rock Hudson announced he had AIDS. It was one of the first times the disease had a recognizable face. The reaction was immediate and complicated. Shock, sympathy, fear, but also something else. A realization that Hollywood had been telling one story while hiding another, and that sometimes the cost of that illusion was everything.
Here's where it gets a little more complicated, because not all of these stories are crimes or scandals in the traditional sense. Some of them are about something else entirely. Control, image, the idea that who you really are might not be what the audience is allowed to see. And if that's true, then you start to wonder, how much of old Hollywood was real, and how much of it was carefully managed? Now let's talk about Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a star, she was the star, famous in a way that felt almost unreal. But by the early 1960s, things were unraveling. Missed shoots, struggles with addiction, increasing isolation, and then connections. Rumors linked her to powerful men, including John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. Nothing ever proven, but the timing raised eyebrows. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home. Official cause? Probable suicide. Case closed. Except it never really closed. Missing phone records, conflicting timelines, quiet inconsistencies. For decades, theories have circled the same question. Was Marilyn Monroe simply a tragic star who couldn't escape her own life? Or was she caught in something much bigger than Hollywood? To millions of Americans, George Reeves was Superman. Strong, reliable, untouchable, which made what happened next hard to accept. In 1959, Reeves was found dead in his home from a gunshot wound, ruled a suicide. But almost immediately, doubts surfaced. Friends said he wasn't depressed. The scene raised questions. The timeline didn't sit right. There were rumors of a complicated relationship with a powerful studio-connected woman, and whispers that he had been looking to leave the role that made him famous. Over the years, the story has been revisited again and again. Each time, the same uneasy conclusion. The official answer exists, but not everyone believes it.
Now, before we get to this last one, this is where things shift. Because everything we've talked about so far, fame, control, scandal, this next story isn't about losing a career. It's about something much darker. and it's never been solved. Old Hollywood sold something powerful: beauty, fame, escape. And for a while, people believed it completely. But behind the lights, there were other stories. Stories of pressure, control, reinvention, and sometimes something darker. Not everything was as it seemed. And maybe that's the real story. Not just the scandals themselves, but how easily they were shaped, softened, or simply made to disappear.
Los Angeles, 1947. A woman's body is found in a vacant lot, severely mutilated, drained of blood, posed in a way that felt deliberate. Her name was Elizabeth Short, but the press gave her another name, the Black Dahlia. She wasn't a major star, not yet, but like so many others, she had come to Hollywood chasing something: opportunity, recognition, maybe just a different life. What she found instead was something much darker. The investigation moved fast, then slow, then nowhere. Dozens of suspects, confessions that didn't hold up, leads that disappeared. The press sensationalized everything, and the case slipped out of reach. To this day, it remains unsolved. No definitive answer, no closure, just one lingering image: a city built on dreams, and the quiet realization that not everyone who came to Hollywood made it out.
Old Hollywood sold something powerful: beauty,
Fame, escape. And for a while, people believed it completely. But behind the lights, there were other stories. Stories of pressure, control, reinvention, and sometimes something darker. Not everything was as it seemed, and maybe that's the real story. Not just the scandals themselves, but how easily they were shaped, softened, or simply made to disappear.